Welcome all to the first episode in the Sweetgrass Preparedness Off-Grid video series. Today we're going to talk about getting off-grid. First place, you got to get there. So today we're modifying our trusty rusty 2002 Chevy Silverado to be able to get to the property better. We took a look at the property and the roads are less than favorable. So today I'm going to be doing the start of a mid-travel suspension project to be able to go out at that property all the time without any issues. Now as the camera follows me, I'm going to show you that we're modifying the suspension and the subframe of the truck to be able to handle the rigors it's going to be able to have to handle on a daily basis. Now there's two ways to go about this. You can either go big and heavy or you can go fast and light. I'm going to be going fast and light because I believe that I want to get out of there if I have to, and I don't want to be carrying around a military 5-ton that goes about 65 miles an hour. Now as you can see, I've got the entire suspension torn apart and a new subframe welded on. From there on, I'm going to extend the lower control arms and I'm going to add better shocks. And I'm going to upgrade the brakes, also get bigger wheels and tires. And I might even be able to fit a bigger fender on the front and the rear of the truck. We'll get there in time. First I have to handle the issue of power. This engine is pretty powerful as it is, but these guys say we always need more. So when you're going off-grid, you need to think about where your property's at, where the location is, what are the roads getting there, and what are the major terrain features, and what are the seasonal conditions. Now, we're in Colorado, so we get a lot of snows, we also get a lot of flash floods, we also get a lot of washouts, roads washed away, things like that. I will be outfitting this with a winch on the front and the back. Also, I have a high lift jack with us constantly, as well as just a normal bottle jack. I'll have an entire towing kit, survival kit, and tool kit with us. There will be a mobile workshop on the property, and when we get to that portion of the video series, I will show you the rest of what we're going to do. Now, you'll excuse me, I have some grinding to do. Alright, now we're back at the mobile base camp here, and I'm going to go through some considerations with you for getting off grid. As you saw, we were taking the truck apart and doing some suspension modifications and frame modifications. There are a lot of things we're going to have to consider when we're getting off grid. Now, one of the first ones is terrain considerations. What are the roads like? Gravel, mud, rocky, are they through a forest? You need to think about things like that. If they are gravel roads, what size of gravel is being used? If they're a normal gravel road, they use 3/4 minus. But if they're like the road that we're going to be traveling on, they've got 3-inch, kind of potato-sized rocks. So therefore, we're going to have an independent front suspension. We're going to have a lot of articulation. We're going to have good shocks. And we're going to have tires that give it a smoother ride. Plus, we're going to have tires that will go through mud, because the second half of the road is going to be muddy anytime it rains, anytime it snows, and it's going to be that nice, thick, silty mud that people hate to go through. So when you're thinking about muddy roads, is it a sandy road or is it a silty clay road? Rocky. Do we have large boulders in and on the road? If we do, we're going to have more ground clearance. We're going to have better suspension, and we're going to have better tires. So these are some other things to consider when building your suspension, your tires, your wheels package, your shocks. We need to make sure that we can get there. We can get there, consistently. We need to make sure that we can get out there anytime we want and get out of there anytime we want. Forest. Are there trees on the side of the road? Because they probably will fall down at some point in time. So while you're doing your vehicle build, you need to think about doing a winch in either the front or the back, or both. You also need to figure out how to keep a chainsaw with you and be able to clear a large tree that has fallen in your path and on the road. Was there a forest fire recently? In our case, there was. We've got kind of a mix of all the conditions. Forest fires, gravel, rocky, sandy, silty. So we have to look at the erosion control that's being done on the forest fires, which in this case, there is none. So now we're going to have to take that into consideration on when it rains, how much of the road is going to be washed out. Is it going to be washed out to a huge crater, or are we going to have to find a second route to get to the property or to get out of the property? We need to figure out, okay, well, these are the areas the forest fire was in. We need to avoid them for now when it's wet. We can go back through them when it's normal conditions. Do we need to have a tractor, blade, implement on there? Things like that. The next part about we're going to have to think about are the seasonal considerations. What's the weather going to be like? Obviously, if you live where we do in Colorado, you're going to have snow, rain, thunderstorms, some tornadoes, definitely forest fires. So when it is snowing, we need to think about, are the roads seasonally maintained or not? If they are we going to have to plow them ourselves, or is somebody else going to do it for us? Another thing when you think about is rain. You know, are there canyons in the area? If there are, you're guaranteed to have flash floods, and you're also going to have washouts and gullies and things like that that weren't there the day before you drove the trail. Once again, more ground clearance is needed. Are the road conditions hilly? Is there going to be a lot of mud going uphill? You're going to need more power. You're going to need less power. These are things you really have to think about before you even think about going to your property. Now, ideally, you'd like it on a road that's got 3/4 inch gravel and there's not a lot of traffic on it, things like that. That way you can get out there easy and get back easy. Tornadoes. You need to have a good line of sight if you're in a very tornado-prone area. That way you can know if a tornado is coming. Keep a weather channel with you or a weather radio alert box with you. Do you need to have an underground shelter? Hurricanes. Do you need an above-ground shelter? Do you need to be able to get out of there in a hurry if you start having a Katrina-style event? Forest fires. Do you need sprinkler systems in and around your house? How are you going to get through or get out if you have a forest fire? So when we're going to do the build of the truck, you need to really think about all of these. And like I said, we're going to have gravel, mud, rock, forest, silt, clay. It's going to be a mixture of everything. Now we're going to think about the type of vehicle that we're going to choose. Now a lot of guys really just want the big military 5-ton, which is fine, or they want a Humvee, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But you have to think about parts availability and reliability. Those are absolutely key. The Humvees are not known for their reliability. Now, if you took the Humvee engine out and stuck a, I don't know, 6.6 Duramax or something in there where you can find parts for it all day long, I mean, I guess that would be fine, but it's a lot of work for a mediocre truck. Now, you can do the Jeep-style trucks, short wheelbase, you can get around, got good ground clearance from the factory. I would add a little more. You could get a 1500 or F-150 style pickup truck, just a light-duty truck. Even a medium-duty truck you could do. You can also go with an SUV. That way you could carry more people. You could get more towing out of it instead of just having a little crossover that can haul, it's got a 1,500-pound rating for towing. You could also go with the big F-350 Super Duty. I mean, that'll get you a lot of towing capacity, and it still has some nimbleness to it, so we can still go through some of these trails. You can do a 5-ton if you need to do a lot of stuff like that, but you got to remember, if you're going to some of these places like we're going to have to, you're going to have these big hairpin corners. You're going to have tight mountain roads. Unless you live in Kansas, then you don't really have to worry about that. But if you do, you also have to think about, how am I going to get building materials back there? How am I going to get a trailer back there? How am I going to get this, X, Y, and Z back there? Now, as you can see, I've driven, pardon the drawing, I'm not an artist. But you can see I got a little, light-duty pickup with a 24-foot gooseneck on it, approximately. Now, this big long trailer is going to have a hell of a time coming around these corners all the time. We have corners out there that are like this. They're a dime a dozen. I mean, you're going to encounter 30 or 40 corners just like this getting out there. Now, if another car is coming, if you only have to do it once, that's fine. But if you're doing it back and forth all the time, well, you might have a few more problems than you originally saw. You can also do a bumper pull trailer, an 18-foot or something like that, or you can do a single axle 10 or 12-foot trailer. This can haul most of the building materials that you're going to need. You might need to make 1 or 2 more trips, but it's nimble, it's light, and you don't have to worry about getting around some of these bends. So back to parts availability and reliability. What's almost needed in almost every single type of off-grid situation you can think of, you're going to need probably close to a 3-inch lift, whether it's done through body lifts or whatever. That's your call. I would do a suspension lift, torsion bar lift, leveling kit, something of that nature. That way the suspension and the transmission transfer case is all up off the ground. That way you don't have to worry about scraping. You're also going to have to think about, like I said, tires. Do you need a mud terrain tire? Do you need a sand tire? Do you need a rock climbing tire? We're going to have to go with something like a Pro Comp Mud Terrain 2. I think is the brand that we were recommended. Talk to your local 4x4 professional. He'll get you squared away a little bit more, because there is such a wide variety of tires, and the terrain that you're going to be in, they might know a little bit better than I would, say for Alabama or for New York or Maine or somewhere like that. But you really want to make sure that these whatever tires you get, they're not cheap. I mean, our Pro Comp tires are going to be $350 each. That's it's a pretty penny to spend, but you have to think about tread wear, you have to think about tread patterns, you have to think about how they're going to hold up to boulders, stones, sticks, mud, things like that. If you have to do a creek cross and you don't have a big thick tire, you just went and got some used BF Goodrich all-terrain that's already got 20,000 miles on it, and you go through that creek, spin the tires, and slice it open on a rock, well, well, now you're changing a tire on the side of the road. You know, and who knows, you could be in a rainstorm, flash flood, whatever the case may be. The next thing you got to think about is shocks. Now, if it's really muddy, it's not as big a deal as if you're doing something, like I said, with big, large rocks, boulders, or you're doing 3-inch size gravel, because like I said, the suspension is going to be articulating like crazy, and you're going to need those shocks to be able to keep your tires sticking to the ground and to be able to hold up to it. Now, if you go out and just go get the Rancho 9000 series shocks, that's fine, but just remember, if you're on a road like we're going to be on, you'll be replacing shocks about every 3 months. So now that we've gone through all this, I want you to really take the time and understand what it's going to mean to have to get out there, because it's not going to be an easy task in a lot of these cases, because going off-grid means just that, going off-grid. And even if you're just trying to get out into the country, that's fine too. But remember, take everything into consideration. I mean, you're not going to have direct access to Comcast. You're not going to have high-speed internet unless you do Skybeam or some other satellite internet provider. These are some things you have to think about. And there are some sacrifices you might have to make. Like right now, we call this the mobile base camp. We are living in a motorhome until we get back up to the property, because it's more feasible for us, plus it's mobile, so we can take anything anywhere we want. We don't have to build a house just yet. We can find the perfect area to build a house or to build a cabin, and we can check out the seasonal weather just in case there's something that we overlooked. And with that, we'll catch you on the next one. Stick around for the second episode of the Sweetgrass Preparedness Off-Grid series, where we take a look at the property and see what our prospective permaculture angles are going to be.